What is up, everybody? Welcome back here to the TDR channel. We're back with another Dynasty Mock Draft. We haven't done one of these this offseason, so I'm excited to dive into it. So what we do here is we kind of go through a 15-round startup draft. Now, what we did on this one, we included all assets, including 2025 rookies, not the picks, but the actual players. So we could see kind of how you could build teams around these rookies, especially if you're in some startups. I know there's some degenerates out there that are in some startups right now. So I wanted to do a mock draft here. So what we're going to be doing is going through 15 rounds. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to be using this startup to look at value. So I'm going to talk about some buys, some sells, and some stashes out there. And we're going to look at team builds, right? And then I'm going to kind of go over kind of a little bit of strategy in terms of mocks right now. Or if you're in a startup, how you use mocks, but also just if you're in a startup, what you should be looking at and players you should be looking at. So let's dive into it. Let's start the first 5 rounds. And generally speaking, we're not going to go through every single pick. That's impossible. But what I do want to do is talk about trends, right? So rounds 1 through 5, what you're going to see here, the running back market has shifted. So last year at this time, when we were doing mocks and I was doing a lot of dynasty stuff, when you're looking at that, you're looking at maybe 4 or 5 running backs going the top 5 rounds, right? And really, you're looking at Bijan and Gibbs and these guys like Brees. They were going later, right? They were going maybe late second. I know Bijan, it just depended on what league you were in, but they generally were going later than what they've gone for in this draft. You see Bijan and Gibbs right there, 1, 2. Then you have Ashton Genty from Boise State going as the 3rd running back taken. And we're going to go through all the rookies. So I'm going to dive into those guys after this. Then you have Hall, Achane, Taylor, Barkley, Williams, and Irving and Hampton. And I think the thing that you have to say is like Barkley's year that he had last year has propped him up. I think Bucky and his perceived value rise and what he can do in that offense has risen him up. And then Kyron Williams is one of those guys that nobody likes drafting, but he just gives you fantasy points, right? And so really, generally speaking, I think running backs are coming back a little bit. I think we always see ebbs and flows in the format. Everybody's huge on wide receivers all the time, but we are starting to see a little bit of a shift with that running back market. Now, I think you have to really draft well if you're going to take early running backs. And I think the way teams did this and built around some guys, I thought was a lot of fun. You'll see with the Jamar Chase team there at 107, getting Chase, London, Achane, and then Mayfield and Young. That's if you're going to do it this way and you're going to go, wide receivers in that first 2 rounds, that's a good way to build your roster, right? I thought that was an interesting build there. So you're going to see the running back market shift now. You're starting to see that a little bit more. And then the other thing I wanted to notice that QB2 decisions, right? So after you look at like the first 5, right? You're looking at, Herbert went a little early in this one, but Daniels, Jackson, Allen, Burrow, Hurts. Then you have Mahomes kind of sitting out there in that 110 mark. And it's so hard for me not to draft Mahomes at 110, even though every dynasty person out there saying he's not at that value, but it's hard to pass him there. And then you have like Stroud and Williams, Caleb Williams. Then there's a tier. You have Drake May and Bo Nix sitting there, and I'd be more comfortable drafting Drake May. I'm a noted Bo Nix hater, though. So, Drake May is there. And then you have that real big tier. So when you're looking at this, if you have one of those first 5 picks, you're taking a quarterback. And I think that's the right way to do it. And then you have to look at it and say, okay, who's going to be my QB2, right? Who in that QB2 range? So is it Brock Purdy? Is it Jordan Love, Michael Penix Jr., Kyler Murray, Mayfield, Dak, JJ, and then Lawrence, right? Those are the kind of those QB2s you feel more comfortable with. And to me, 2 guys stand out right off the bat. Dak Prescott, which Go Cowboys had a great draft here. Burrow and then Dak as his QB2. That's fantastic because I think Dak could be a top 10 quarterback. So you get Burrow, who showed out last year, that top 5 guy. Then you get Dak on the back end too, and you pair him with 2 assets like Brown and Hall. Excellent start to your draft. And then you have like JJ McCarthy, a guy that I like. I think he has high upside, and I was on the clock there. You'll see there I drafted out of the first spot, and it was really between McCarthy and Lawrence. And I was struggling with that pick, but I went with the upside of McCarthy, Justin Jefferson in that offense. They made Darnold look good, right? And with Lawrence, I understand he's got Cohen. I think that is going to be a better offense. I'm still worried about just what his ceiling is, where I don't know what JJ's ceiling is, right? There's also risk there. It's a mystery box. He didn't play last year, but I think with my build, I like that. Now, some other guys, I know Tua's sitting there, but the concussion scare people. Bryce is a great QB2 option, but I think there's still a little risk there. I think we're very happy with how he performed last year, but there's still concerns that like that might be what he is, right? Maybe he's not a top 12 guy. If he can consistently be that 13 to 16 guy, I think you're okay in fantasy. If you get someone else, right? If it's Baker and Bryce, you're a little concerned about that if they don't hit their ceilings, right? Then you got Tua, Jared Goff, Anthony Richardson is always going to be there. But two big takeaways for me is like, if you don't get one of those top QBs, you're probably going to go Chase, Jefferson, Neighbors, maybe Bijan in that range. Puka's in there, CeeDee Lamb, Gibbs, like the team that got Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. That's ridiculous, right? Those guys got them, but then it's like, okay, who's my QB1 in that instance, and who's that QB2 I'm willing to take and kind of reach on a little bit, but hope he maybe hit some QB1 weeks. To me, two stand out to me, Dak and JJ. I like Baker too. I think Baker could fit in that mold, but in terms of this mock, where they're at, Dak and JJ kind of stand out to me as being solid picks right now. Now, just based on these top 5 rounds here, the one guy that I think is trending towards a sell is Xavier Worthy. And I talked about him a little bit already, but the thing with Xavier Worthy is I like him. I had him in my bio for months, year actually. I was a big proponent of Xavier Worthy, and he had a huge Super Bowl, right, after they had a pretty bad offensive showing. I just think that his value at wide receiver 20 is too high for what I think it's going to be next year with Rashee Rice coming back. I think they're going to replenish that offense. I think they're going to draft a running back. I think they might draft a tight end. I think if Kelsey's done or whatever, he's obviously a shell of himself, and Worthy fits into that, but I think Rashee eats into that. I think Rashee Rice is the better asset I want on my roster, and when you look at what he's going for right now, might be willing to kick the tires on a little Xavier Worthy, right? Xavier Worthy, 112 for Garrett Wilson. Now, these are all on fantasycalc.com, 12-team Superflex tight end premiums. Xavier Worthy, 102 for Puka Nacua, right? And if you're looking at that, it's essentially Xavier and Tet McMillan right now for Puka Nacua. I'm okay getting Puka Nacua in that instance. That's how you win dynasty leagues. You go get dollar pieces, right? Not quarter pieces. Worthy, Isaiah Pacheco, 205 for Bucky Irving. This is the one where if you want to buy a running back, maybe Bucky's the guy that you want to buy. You're not really giving up too much, right? You're really not, especially if your roster build is the right way. I might take Bucky in that instance. Xavier at 301 for Michael Pittman in the 203. Probably the 203 leans me that way because it is an early second possibility, that running back deep class there. And then Worthy, 212 and Isaiah Pacheco for T. Higgins. Again, T. Higgins could be, I know they're probably going to get franchised. I understand how that's going to look for Cincinnati, but T. Higgins is a better asset and a better fantasy asset than Xavier Worthy, right? And to me, Isaiah is kind of done. 212 is, hey, it's a late second. I'll give that up for a guy like T. Higgins because you can immediately sell T. Higgins later for much more than this return if you could get it, right? So to me, Xavier Worthy is just a sell, not based on talent. I think outcomes possibly after that offense gets reshaped next year, but also on the deals that you could possibly make. The pieces you can grab for him, I think, are the reason why I would try to kick the market out there and see what your league looks like. Now, the rookie takeaways in this, I'm just going to kind of go through where they got drafted. 303, running back 3 was Ashton Genty. Wide receiver 12, and this is overall. Obviously, these are in order for rookies, is Teteroa McMillan. 402 was tight end 3, Tyler Warren, and that was early. I have not seen Tyler Warren go that early, but he went at tight end 3. Wide receiver 20 was Luther Burden, and then running back 10 was Amari Hampton. So those are your top 5 rookies that got drafted here in the first 5 rounds. Now, round 6 through 10, a little bit of a different kind of area here. You're going to see a tight end landscape, right? So this is where you start seeing kind of after those top 5-ish guys, you see Hawkinson in there, Loveland, Kittle, Njoku, Andrews, Kyle Pitts, Ferguson, Fannin, Tucker Kraft, Pat Freiermuth. So this is where you start seeing, okay, if I'm going to wait on tight end, what of those guys do I feel comfortable with? Is it the rookie like Loveland, right? And again, Loveland went later, way much later than Warren did. If you think Loveland's tight end 1, you're happy with that. Like I took him at 612. I was very happy with that landing spot for him in terms of, hey, I can get him for value there. Now, some other guys I like, Njoku, I think. This is going to be disgusting. But Kyle Pitts in the 9th or 10th round is not a bad bet, right? He's still only 24, guys. There's still a possibility where, hey, from a tight end perspective, especially in a premium league, 1.75 in this one, it's kind of worth it to kind of grab that value drop and just ride it out and see what he has. Now, I drafted him as my tight end 2 in a premium league because I don't mind going for that upside with those 2 guys in Loveland and Pitts. Again, could be there. Fan and the other rookie. And then you have Ferguson. The only 2 guys I probably would not necessarily draft, or 3 guys, Hawkinson and the 606. I'm kind of out on Hawkinson, especially after his season last year. Tucker Kraft, pretty out of him, and Freiermuth I'm not drafting. I'd much rather have Fannin or Ferguson in those ranges than those guys. And then this is also your 0 running back territory. So if you don't want to take a running back in those first 5 rounds, this is what you're looking at. And you're looking at some pretty good pieces. I think Kenneth Walker, he's getting slept on a little bit in the 6th. James Cook, again, kind of getting slept on. I think he's going to get a contract with the Bills. I think that he has 2 to 3 years, notwithstanding injury, to be possibly a top 12 running back. If he's your running back 1, depending on your build, that's a hell of a build in those first 5 rounds to add him with. CMC is always the wild card there. I mean, going in the 7th round might be worth it, kind of kicking the tires out there on them. Some other guys that kind of stand out to me, when you're looking at rookies, Devin Neal's in there, Judkins is in there, Johnson, Scatterbo, Henderson. This is where a lot of the rookies kind of went in that range at the running back spot. But I do think that there's some solid running backs. So the one thing about this tier is I want you to kind of see where if I don't take a running back early in those first 5 rounds, here's where these running backs are. Who can I build my roster around? Right? That's why we do these mocks to understand, like, hey, in these locations, these are some guys I can build around. Maybe it is a rookie. If I'm going young and I feel like a rookie's going to get day 2 capital, it's always a risk draft and running back rookies in these things before the draft goes, or even quarterbacks for that matter. But maybe I can build around a Henderson at a 701, right? Maybe I can build in that range. Now, the buy based on these 5 rounds, I'm going to get some shit for this because it is what it is. But Jalen Wright, to me, he's the running back 2 on Miami next year behind a guy like Devon Chain that is injured a lot, right? And I don't want to say a lot. That's maybe fake news, but he gets banged up a little bit. There's times where, he's going to need spot. I don't think he takes the full volume. I think he's more of a PPR guy. I could see Jalen Wright getting more red zone work. And I think they drafted him for a reason. Like, I like Jalen Wright, and I believe that his value right now is a buy. He's essentially going for a 3rd. Look at these deals. Ben Sinnott might be one of those ones that, like, I know some guys out there like Ben Sinnott from the Commanders. Alec Pearson, a 301. Marvin Mims, Tyrone Tracy, but you get a 2nd back. You might want to go kick the tires in Jalen Wright. I think that he's one of those guys that he's an injury away from being a 3-down back in a high-volume offense with the Miami Dolphins. And even then, I think for a 3rd in 2026, man, I take the shot in the draft capital, the location, the spot, the potential volume. Jalen Wright, to me, in this area is a buy. He went at the 1009 mark. That's a hell of a value for a guy that can be a very, very servable piece. I think he can be a flex option next year. I think that, not as crazy as that sounds, he can be that. I think he can do that for your teams. So Jalen Wright to me is a buy in that category. Now, want to get a little bit to the rookies a little bit more in this one because we had a lot more. So QB 24 is Cam Ward, first rookie quarterback off the board. Then we have tight end 7 at Colson Loveland. Running back 13 is Travion Henderson. Matthew Golden at wide receiver 30. Wide receiver 31 was Emeka Egbuka. Running back 17, Crenshaw Judkins. 18 is Caleb Johnson. 19 was Cameron Scatterbo. So that's a little earlier than I've seen him go in a lot of these drafts, right? So this is basically an early 2nd for Cameron Scatterbo there. That, to me, just tells me someone thinks he's going to get day 2 capital. They like him enough to where he's going to get that capital there. The next rookies that went in this run, Trey Harris, wide receiver 34. Shedeur Sanders went 3 rounds later. So thinking of where Cam Ward went, he went 3 rounds later from Cam Ward there at QB 25. Running back 24 was Devin Neal. 28 was Ollie Gordon. Then the ultimate wild card, baby, is Travis Hunter, wide receiver 45. Not a bad price there. I think, when you're looking at it, I probably made a mistake not grabbing him when I could have in that kind of that, maybe that 9th round. If he was there at 10-12, I was definitely taking him sitting there. But Travis Hunter is the ultimate wild card, and no one knows what the hell to do with him. And to be honest with you, from a CFF perspective, like a college fantasy perspective, it was kind of that same way when we were drafting him for the last couple of years, even in Devy. Look at the returns. Dude won the Heisman. He had over his receiving. He was one of the best receivers in college football. So if you can get a guy like Talent at 10:05, it's worth that all the time. Harold Fannin went at tight end 14, and then Tez Johnson from Oregon, wide receiver 47. We'll see what happens at the combine with Tez, but has that a possibility to kind of really grow as a player and grow that draft stock. Now, the next 5 rounds here, rounds 11 to 15. This is really where you start getting into some second-year wild cards, right? So really where I'm looking at is Keon Coleman. What is Keon Coleman next year? Can he really take that next step and elevate himself into that Josh Allen kind of realm? What are the Bills going to do on offense there? Xavier Leggett, another one, right? Jalen McMillan, another one right there sitting in that 11th round. Trey Benson, what is Trey Benson? Is he going to be a washout? Or is he that real piece behind James Conner that can kind of start creating that role for himself there? Or did we just miss on that one? Did people miss on Trey Benson there? Now, that's really what you're looking at in this round. You get a lot of those second round guys. Marshawn Lloyd is another one that I really like. Obviously, I drafted him. That I think that, again, can be the running back 2 in the Green Bay Packers, right behind Josh Jacobs. Has that opportunity ahead of him, just like Jalen Wright, right? So there's a lot of those 2-year guys, those second-year players, those wild card guys you're going to start throwing, darts here. And I think, realistically, those are some darts that are worth taking. I think there's some guys in that range that I really like that I think you can grab. I think Keon Coleman would be an interesting one, depending on build. He's there with Josh Allen. He showed some flashes last year. Maybe Keon Coleman takes that next step, and we're excited for it. Other ones, one last ride veterans, right? Like Devontae Adams is going to be in here. You're looking at James Conner again. Travis Kelce there in the 11th. I've seen him from the 11th to 13th. You could probably throw in maybe Evan Ingram in that category, maybe the next 2 years, right? So there are some veterans in this range. Aaron Jones in the 14th round. This is it, that last ride, right? You draft them here. This is probably what's going on your roster, right? And when you think of veterans too, Ramondre Stevenson might be another one for the Patriots. I've talked about him possibly being a buy. He's not the next Derrick Henry. We're not going to do that, right? I've seen some people talk about that, but he could be that next volume guy for the next 2 years where he's just plugging and playing, and it's a disgusting Najee Harris running back 2, right? That's kind of how I look at Ramondre possibly being, but that's your one last ride, right? Those are your one last ride guys there. Other kind of guys to talk about maybe is the quarterbacks, right? Those kind of Stafford, one last ride there off the sunset. Kirk Cousins going to the 14th round as your QB2. Geno Smith, his time is coming to an end. We know I like to talk about it in the Discord a lot. Geno Smith is ass. Everybody knows I say that. But this could be it for him in terms of that being that veteran QB2 bridge for you if you drafted a rookie, if you drafted a Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. Then you get one of these veteran guys on the way back, and then you just kind of plug them in this year, and then next year you elevate that rookie. So that's kind of what you see in these 11 to 15 rounds. Remember, I always advocate getting as many picks as you can in the top 10 rounds, right? You really want to try to get as many of those picks as you can. You want to try to get as many assets as you can in a top 120. And I always advocate as many top 24 assets at the position you can grab. That's what you're trying to do. So trying to trade up into that range. I do not trade back into this range from a dynasty startup perspective. I'm trading up. I'm trying to get in those categories there. Now, the one stash I want to talk about on this, and it's a guy I haven't talked about on this channel in a while. Jatavian Sanders is a guy I think is worth a stash here. He's tied in 21, but when you look at where he's going, after Cole Kmet, Ben Sinnott, Otten, Elijah Arroyo, he's a rookie there, and then going right before, Rondé Gadsden and Mason Taylor. But he's kind of already found himself a role in Carolina. I think him and Bryce Young kind of found this momentum there, and it wasn't pretty. It wasn't great, right, when we're thinking of Jatavian Sanders' numbers, but he found the end zone. We like that. Hey, he could score those. There's a reason why Bryce took that next step. I think one of the things with Bryce was he kind of looked at Jatavian down the stretch, found him in multiple games where you saw him have those targets there. 43 targets this year, 340 yards, a touchdown. Over time, really kind of solidified himself in the middle of the season, creating those targets. Now, what are they going to do? Like, what's Carolina going to do? They're probably going to add. I've seen Ted McMillan kind of get thrown out there. But if they don't, if they kind of run it back with their offense, maybe add a couple pieces, but smaller pieces, I think Sanders could be your biggest benefactor. Benefactor. I don't know how I can pronounce that. But Sanders to me is that guy. He could be just that plug-in guy. It's not pretty. I wouldn't expect any more from a tight end 2-ish, right, kind of range. But based on his value, maybe worth taking a shot. If I'm in a dynasty startup, these rounds, I don't mind drafting him as my tight end 2 and stashing him. Right now, what he's going for, 26 second is probably too rich. He went in there for that, but I give up a third, though, if I really needed a tight end in a premium league. Isaiah Pacheco's really hot out there. Jatavian at 108 for Dalton Kincaid. That's a very, very big tear down to get to Jatavian from Dalton. I don't know if 108 does it, but if it's 105 or higher, I definitely would do it there. And then Jatavian and Audric Estime, I'm okay with that. I'm okay if you're looking at the Broncos and they're saying, hey, we're not going to draft another running back. We don't need another running back, so I'm going to take Jatavian Sanders instead. I'm 100% okay with that, and I would take Jatavian there. Now, next part of this is the rookies, and when you're talking about kind of where they're getting taken, is Dylan Sampson, running back 35. Wide receiver 51 was Jack Beck. Wide receiver 52 is Jalen Royals. Wide receiver 53 is Jaden Higgins. Running back 37 is Jordan James. Tight end 18, Elijah Arroyo. Bayshaw Tootin, who got a little first round buzz out there from CBS, running back 39. And people love Tootin. I'll tell you this, he's fast. He's fast as hell. So the one thing that you're going to see at this combine coming up, if he runs really fast and he kind of gets in that 4.3 marker, he's going to go up. So maybe we're just ahead of the game here, sitting at running back 39 for him. And then Xavier Restropro sitting there at wide receiver 61 out of Miami. Then wrap these guys up. Jackson Dart, QB 30. Jarquez Hunter, sleeper, I guess. I don't know. My buddy Shane thinks so. He's an Auburn fan. Big in our Discord. We've been talking about him, and he's a 1,000-yard rusher in the SEC. I mean, there's something to note there. He's got to have a big combine, though. RJ Harvey, running back 45. Brashard Smith, running back 46. Rhonda Gadsden, tight end out of 23 out of Syracuse. Mason Taylor, tight end 24. Will Howard, QB 32. Isaiah Bond, wide receiver 67. And Elegant Manor from Stanford, wide receiver 69. So this is how the rookie players got drafted and where they got drafted. Just in case you want to kind of maybe pause the video or take a screenshot or whatever, just to see where these guys are getting valued based on this mock. Now, not perfect, as always mention Dynasty Data Lab. They'll have the rookie picks insulated in there. But to me, this kind of shows you kind of how team builds went and where they wanted to kind of plug these guys in. And this just shows you kind of your top-ish, I didn't really do the math in my head, but you're kind of looking at your top 40 rookies right now based on where they're getting drafted. There was a few guys that are still not in there. Jalen Noel is not in there. Okay, there's a few guys still not in a sleeper database that you need to know about that definitely would have got drafted here. But it's a good start, kind of see where you're at. And this is the board. So this is kind of the team build and kind of what it looked like there in terms of the value and what you're looking at. And the biggest thing is, when we're thinking of team build and we're thinking of kind of where all these guys go, Josh Allen sitting there at the 101 in my build, just to go over it. I went 0 running back, and I took Henderson, Harris, and Lloyd. Not the shaky, not the greatest in right there, but I do like Henderson and Harris. I think Harris is going to be disgusting running back 2. I think Henderson's going to get running back day 2 capital, and I just kind of built around wide receivers. I'm young, maybe not ready to compete right away, but can definitely have some pieces there to kind of get me on ready for that build. Maybe productive struggle year 1 to where year 2, I'm ready to go. The other team that I really wanted to point out that I loved his start. I thought his start was fantastic, and just it went from there. But go Cowboys. Burrow, Brown, Hall, Prescott. I probably wouldn't have taken Kincaid. I probably would have waited on Kincaid, and I would have probably grabbed Ayuk or maybe another rookie running back or someone in that range. I don't love having Kincaid there. I would have probably just waited to take Ferguson in the 10th round. That's kind of what I have there. But this is some interesting team builds. You see a lot of 0 running back builds. I think the biggest thing you have to know is that if you're drafting from 107 on, you really got to make some decisions there of who your second quarterback is going to be, or do you kind of reach up and take a Stroud-Williams stack like he did at the end of the first? I really like that team build as well. That was a 0 running back build there too in terms of what he did, and mine was a little bit of a different kind of build. I didn't go quarterback, but just so you're kind of aware of these different builds out there. They were a lot of fun. I think that they did a good job of kind of drafting there. Now, just kind of recap the Dynasty draft, whatever. Rookie picks versus rookie players. And the biggest thing is if you're in a Dynasty startup and they do picks, that's all about value, right? So for me, I'm just looking at value and just taking the value as it comes, right? The 101, if it's dropping down to the 3rd round, I'll take it just because of value-wise. Now, rookie players, though, you have to start really building. I think the biggest thing you have to be careful with rookie players, if they don't get the capital, you're screwed, right? You can't really worry about landing spot because it is what it is. That's Rochambeau. You're just getting lucky. Hey, it is what it is. But you got to look at what players you got to be careful with, right? So Malik Willis a couple years ago, he was going really high in startup drafts, right? Then he didn't get the capital that people thought, and it really screwed some people. Kayshon Boutte, same guy. Many thought was like Luther Burden-ish, hey, he's going to be a top 30 pick. That's Kayshon Boutte. He's going to do that. Didn't get the capital, right? And those are the guys you got to be really worried about. So be very careful with that. Running backs as well. So be very careful. I take high floor guys. I will say this, though. There's a lot of veteran value in these types of drafts. So I would say that right now, the easiest thing to do is to build a contender without taking all those rookie picks and rookie players in there. Building contenders pretty easy right now. You can grab a lot of those veteran pieces that fall and build a team ready to go. You can still get some late round guys, and you never know what's going to happen. You take that late round running back. a Bashaw 210, or not Amari Hampton, he went early, but Bashaw 210, or maybe you take a shot on one of those, those Marshawn Lloyd. That's what I was looking for. Those second year sophomore slump guys that maybe could bounce back. Then you get a little lucky there and you get some youth integrated into your roster. That's when you have a true contender there. So there is veteran value. And I always advocate this, just draft best player available right now, right? Like you can build your team, that's fine. And most guys did, but you just take the best player available in your dynasty draft right now. It is February. So, if you're drafted in February, you are a true degenerate. But even then, you have so much time from February to August to really build a roster. Draft that value, get those rookies. Don't mind trading them and flipping them as we get some rookie hype. That's also the fun of drafting before the combine and the draft. You're going to get a lot of rookie hype going, so you can move these guys beforehand. It's a little riskier, but it's a lot of fun to kind of flip some guys that maybe don't get the capital. Talk a little crap in your league chat. So that's kind of the Dynasty recap. I hope it kind of helps you guys kind of understand what mock drafts are looking like, what startups are looking like right now, and who to buy, sell, stash, kind of look how that goes. So we appreciate you guys. As always, jump in our Discord. We talk in there every day. We have a lot of fun in there, just talking to all things football and other stuff. We get a little off the hinges in there. So go check that out. You can find that in the description below. But appreciate you guys. We'll check you guys on the next video.